here with Alicia Paysse of Cervera Real Estate. Cervera is a major real estate developer based in the Miami area, world famous. You guys have some very impressive developments, high-end developments, accessible developments, and we'll get into that throughout Miami. But your track record, I believe, if I remember correctly, as a former Miami resident, goes back over 50 years. First of all, welcome to this interview. Thank you for making time for us. We're really honored to have you, and welcome to Finance Colombia.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be talking to you today. And yeah, it's great that you have lived in so many places and are so familiar with Miami and our exciting market. It's changed a lot. So having your kind of perspective, I think, helps you put it into context. But yeah, you're right. I work with a family company that was founded by my grandmother over 50 years ago in 1969. And we've been working with developers, handling the sales of condominiums since essentially the start of the company. And so over the lifetime of the company, we've represented over 130 condominiums, buildings, that is, in South Florida, and probably over 72,000 condo units in pre-construction sales. So it's a pretty big trajectory in our little pocket of South Florida because we're just a Miami-based company.
It's really fascinating when I think about visiting Miami as a kid back in the 70s. And then also visiting places like Miami Beach, which was this little sleepy kind of uh I don't want to say retirement community, but it just had this kind of funky bohemian vibe, and it was really just a back sleepy place compared to the changes that it went through in the 80s and 90s, with the influx of immigration really giving Miami a vibrant personality, and then to the Miami today, which is this like, even down here in South America, we might say that Bogota is the capital of Colombia, and Washington is the capital of the U.S., but Miami is the capital of Latin America. What kind of changes have you really seen in the evolution of the market, not just from an economic standpoint, but the types of development and the attraction and the reasons and the motivations behind the growth of Miami as an investment destination, a real estate destination from an investment standpoint, but also as a residential standpoint?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of change. The city has grown tremendously. I think the greatest accelerator to the change that we've seen in Miami, both economically and in terms of like what you're saying, the types of developments changing, was the pandemic. The pandemic really opened a lot of people up to having more work from home flexibility. And, people started coming to Miami to see what it was like to live here because you could be outside and everywhere else you couldn't because it was too cold. And people fell in love with the place. And that it drove a huge amount of, in Colombia, one of the things we have to explain to our international buyers that often are interested in real estate in Miami is that not all states have equal tax policy, you know? And so this is like an aha moment for a lot of Latin American buyers when we're explaining why Miami is in a little bit of like an accelerator. When they realize that, you look at the taxes that you have in some of the major cities in our country, like Manhattan or like certain cities in California, and you think to yourself, oh, wow, the highest earners in these markets pay 10% more than the federal income tax. That really makes a lot of people see why there's a natural incentive to move to Miami. And then when the pandemic happened, it really accelerated that. So we've seen huge industry moving, and we've seen huge employers and huge employees of those employers moving as well. The Miami that I was born and raised in, you didn't have staff of any company buying $10 million houses. I mean, there wasn't $10 million houses back then, they didn't even exist when I was growing up. But there, let's say the top of the market, the people that owned those homes, whatever the price might have been, they were people that were the entrepreneurs that started their businesses or the CEOs or very high level. These were not like a 35-year-old that works at Citadel. and is an employee. He might be brilliant, and I'm sure he makes a lot of money for the company, but is still an employee. We didn't have those level of banks. We didn't have that level of economy with those types of jobs where people could even make that much money in a job. And so that shift has led to, a completely different type of also real estate inventory that people are looking for, the level of luxury and the price point we keep seeing elevating because people want to have that like turnkey service experience because the type of people that are being attracted to this market are more and more discerning, are more and more high level. And we're seeing a tremendous amount of, entrepreneurs and people who have international type of jobs as well that have to travel a lot for different types of technology businesses or what have you, growth roles also coming to Miami.
I think you're right. I can think of anecdotally a couple of friends of mine who um, run a publicly traded company that's on New York stock that trades in the U.S. But they just moved from Barranquilla to Miami. And Miami is becoming more and more attractive. When we think about Colombia, for example, we think about a situation with the volatility. By the time this comes out, we have Sunday, the first round of the presidential elections are happening, and we may have 4 more years of we could say, far left ideology in power. We may not. There will probably be a runoff in June. But there is a lot of uncertainty. No matter what happens, and no matter who somebody might even support, there still is a lot of uncertainty. The debt has exploded, and Colombia is going to see an increasing demand for pesos, or for dollars rather, because they need to pay back dollar-denominated debt in the coming years. And all of this uncertainty creates a situation where people are looking for, at minimum, a hedge, right? Because they need to say, look, I can't, it's not prudent to necessarily keep all of my assets in a um, denominated in a way that rapidly can depreciate. But then also, it's good generally to diversify when we talk about real estate across borders and these types of things. You touched on the taxation situation, and in the United States, my own brother just moved to Florida from Ohio primarily because of the tax burden. Because when you're in that top tax bracket, and then even states that are Ohio still is a relatively moderate state, but we look at what just happened in the state of Washington, where they just passed a 10% tax on a millionaire tax on people with, I think, not income, but $1 million of assets. And what happened? Starbucks just announced that they were moving their not I don't know about their legal domicile, but their headquarter operations to Tennessee. We've seen companies leave California for Texas, and you mentioned Citadel. They just went from New York to Miami. And I remember back in the day, so to speak, Miami was not. I remember when I think you had Ryder Trucks, Assurant, and Burger King were the only major company headquarters in Miami. That's changed drastically because now, when you're talking about Silicon Beach and these types of initiatives and such, it really has changed the investment environment for Miami. And so, what is the case when you talk to, because I know that a lot of the investors, and I know that your entire sales team is perfectly competent to work with domestic buyers, but also with the language and the cultural skills with buyers from places not just Latin America, but when I lived in Miami, and this was a surprising thing, people don't realize I became partially fluent in Russian. But you have all of these people who are, if you look at the situation and the instability there, people are moving not just from an investment standpoint, but also from a I want to use the word for where people can continue to live a good life and contribute to their local society. What are the motivations that you see when you talk to the international investor? Is it a place to live? Is it an economic hedge? What are the prime movers? Not to use a pun, when people are looking at real estate opportunities there in Miami.
So, I mean, all of this that we discussed, I think, has positioned Miami really as a very important global city. Before Miami was like, and I don't want to say like a joke, but in the 90s, no one took Miami seriously as an economic force, let's say. For more, even if we had a lot of international banks here, that was just a tiny little grain in the beach of the, US economics. So now, when you look at the city and the environment in the city, and you look and you talk about like the politics, I don't want to talk about politics too much, but one of the large drivers that drives people to Miami over and over has been politics. Even recently with this whole comment that the mayor of New York made about the gentleman at Citadel personally naming him and everything was just something so crazy that, you see people feeling like they're a target. And especially with this, and so people feel safe in Miami. So one of the big things that drives people to Miami is safety. Another thing is, I think, culture. Miami's a place where people want to do things. Miami's not a place where people are like, my gosh, can you believe that car that flashy person is driving? You see
Right.
this person in this car and they're like, good for you? It could be your entire savings for a weekend of fun, or it could be your fifth car. It doesn't really matter. People here are like happy to see other people happy and having a good time. And that's a big thing. When you look at investment, it's a city that's now where, from an international standpoint, the other day I actually heard somebody say, I'm looking at diversifying in real estate, and I am in between New York, London, and Miami. Unimaginable sentence just 10 years ago. Now wealthy international people are seeing Miami as one of the big cities in the world, which has changed the fabric of the place that I live tremendously. It's a different place. It's a completely different place. And it's, I think, a great future ahead of it. So people are looking at that future and seeing how much room there is for the evolution. When you look at the prices in New York and London, and you still see the relative value that Miami offers with an incredible quality of life, safety, excellent climate, better taxes, et cetera, et cetera, people really do see how there's a long runway for appreciation, for a city to continue to grow and become more expensive, which obviously is the same thing as appreciation, but also for more people to continue moving. The other competitors that we have in terms of industry in our country are kind of attacking and alienating the job creators. And we're like, come here, please. And so there's more and more opportunity being created.
I agree. And just seeing the vibrancy of the city. And like I said, I've lived in Miami, but I've had lifelong ties to Miami. My dad was born there. I grew up a Dolphins fan because of him. Now I'm a Buckeye, and people at the Hurricanes don't like that very much. But, one of the things that I've seen is you look at as neighborhoods and areas develop. Um, Brickell is already well developed. I see that they're going to build a new hotel out there on Brickell Key. But I saw an advertisement the other day for a property that they were building in Aventura. And we look at some of the big high rises up along like Sunny Isles Beach. One of the things that you all are doing that's really interesting
Yeah.
is in North Beach. North Miami Beach is, which is, people outside of Florida don't realize that's a separate city than Miami Beach, which is a separate city than Miami. you know, but North Beach has been kind of um, not left behind. There are some nice developments already there and some very high-end residences there, but it hasn't been the flashy, internationally known. LeBron James from Akron, Ohio, didn't say he was going to take his talents to North Beach. He said he was going to take his talents to South Beach. But you guys are doing an interesting development there, and one of the things I think the model and the way that the property can be monetized by its owners. But then also, I looked at the price point, the entry price point, and it's not cheap, but it is not this. It's not saying like maybe the tallest condo in Brickell. It's not saying, hey, our efficiency start at $20 million. And I'm really intrigued because it's something that I looked at that and I said, hell, I can afford that, and I'm a journalist, so maybe tell us about the motivations behind and the details on these new developments that you guys are working on and why North Beach?
Yes, so our developer in North Beach really had a long view. He acquired land very early on and, had been involved in different areas of Miami Beach, in the partnership. They had different levels of involvement over the history of the city. And they saw really, which is a great opportunity, the last area of Miami Beach really yet to be developed. And they were able to get something done, which has just been totally transformative. They were able to get the area with certain provisions approved for short-term rental condominiums. So you have these developments that we have just delivered the first one, which is called 72 Park, and the second one we're in the process of selling, which is called Palma, that are just, 2 blocks from the beach on Miami Beach proper that allow you to rent the residences short term. So you can use it when you want and rent it when you want, and essentially have it kind of cover your expenses in a large part, if not, generate an income depending on how much you want to use it when you're not there. And so this is something that doesn't really exist on Miami Beach. There's been such a strong movement with the hotel lobby to block the short-term rentals that there are no real short-term rental properties. So when they gave a legal framework for the requirements of a building to be able to do that, they finally were able to deliver such a building, and now there's a great opportunity. There may be a lot of short-term rental buildings that are coming online in the city of Miami itself, but there is no area that has more tourism than Miami Beach. Miami is a very global city. We talked about the economic trajectory, the future is bright, what have you. But people, there's just something about when the ocean meets the sand and you have this beautiful beach experience that is unlike anything else. People love the beach. And so that gives you an opportunity to have something very unique in, like you said, a little pocket of a city that is where everybody wants to be. And that's kind of
And
the
you may,
opportunity. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to interrupt, and I didn't mean to step on you there, but you made me think of something. And one of the other advantages that North Miami Beach has is that you're close to the party, but you're not in the party. And I remember working right there in the heart of South Beach, and I didn't live on Miami Beach, but the office of the company I worked for was on Miami Beach, and it was you know at night it's a nonstop party. And it's one thing if you go and visit, okay, if you go and visit you're going to love that, okay, but if you're living there, now you may want to go and get to the party, but the nice thing is that if you're in North Beach you're very very close to that. You can get public transportation, you can get the bus, you can get on a scooter, you're right there. But
I
when
take
you can
Uber.
sleep
Yeah.
at night, you know you
Yeah.
can there's some peace and quiet, uh a reasonable amount. You're not out in the country. You're still in the heart of it all, but you're not in the nightclub district.
Yeah, and I mean also as everything ages, because like those hotels are aging too, you know, the area you want, there's nothing like something that's new and fresh and clean and not full of, older hotels that are full of tourists. So the beach is a completely different scene. You go to the beach in North Beach, it's wider, the sand is longer, you're not competing with thousands of people that are their hotel is right there, and so they just walk to the beach and you're completely inundated with a tourist. In the North Beach area there are not many hotels, it's a more residential area, and you go to the beach and there's space, you can have a conversation without anyone necessarily overhearing your conversation. You can, relax, and it's really nice, it's extremely nice. And so you have a totally different environment. The area is changing also very dramatically, but more for long-term users, like more for residential. There's two rental buildings that are going up for people to live in full time. So the community continues to grow and have like that neighborhood vibe. And the other thing which is like kind of a detail, but I think also is pretty compelling. If you look at a map of Miami Beach, it's pretty skinny, you know? It gets wider when you go south of like 23rd. It becomes wider. And then it becomes wider again north of 63rd. So between really like 25th and 60th, it's a very skinny strip, which is like Collins and Indian Creek, and there's no space for you to develop a neighborhood. And this area where we are, the North Beach area, north of 63rd up to like 70, whatever, 9 you want to say, is wider. And so you have a Publix, you have space for stores, for yoga studios, for coffee shops, for a bunch of pedestrian benefits that you don't get south. So it's a really unique location. It's creating this wonderful little community. We have already seen new restaurants open. And it's really nice. And you can totally see how in the next couple of years it's going to continue to evolve and probably be one of the most sought after areas on the beach.
Now, tell me about more specifically about the development. I believe it's called Palma. And what
Yes.
can you tell me about, let's say, let's just talk about the nuts and bolts, not to mix metaphors, but the starting price, the configurations, one bedrooms, three bedrooms, efficiencies. What is the tell me about the property itself. Is it already built? Is it under construction? What's it going to have in terms of amenities and who are the market segments that you think are most that it would be most attractive to?
So Palma is a boutique building. It's 121 units, which is something I think really nice when you're looking at a property of this type. It is only one and two bedrooms. We've had kind of the most demand for that type of residence when you're talking about something that isn't really a hotel. It's more of a short term or medium term, let's say, stay. People that may want to come a week, 3 weeks, etc., but not forever. The building starts from just 630,000 today. So you have price points that allow you to have a fully finished and furnished one bedroom on Miami Beach, just steps from the beach for $630,000, which is, like you were saying, extremely attractive, especially when you think about the fact that you can rent this property when you're not using it. So we've
Right.
seen a lot of, I mean, by the nature of the fact that it's a short-term rental permitted building, you're not going to really see end users buying there because it's just, it's more transient oriented. People are more like in and out. So it's all been people that are looking either for a second home or for an income producing rental property that have been buying there. You have wonderful amenities. Obviously, today, when you look at, and especially our neighborhood, a very wellness focused building from cold plunge to infrared sauna to gym to outdoor area where you can grill, etc. Across the street, basically, you have a wonderful tennis facility, the Miami Beach Tennis Center. On the beach, right next to the beach, you have beach tennis, you have volleyball, you have an incredible boardwalk that you can run on if you like to run when you're not being chased, which many people seem to like that here. And so you have so many, wellness focused amenities. You have a growing restaurant scene in the area. You have Bal Harbor just a few minutes away. There's incredible shopping there. It's beautiful aside from that. And then you have other malls. You can have Aventura Mall not that far away because we're in North Beach, and the design district basically just across the causeway. So
Hmm.
it's a really exciting location. And the price range really it's excluding like let's say our penthouse, our price ranges are from like 630 to just under 2 million.
Wow. Well, I like I said, I was surprised when I saw that because, I know what Miami prices are like when it comes to real estate, and really, I almost thought that was a typo. So it's really encouraging to see that, and also the legal structure that you mentioned when it comes to short-term rentals, because lots of people do that informally, but we've seen a backlash against it with condo and homeowners associations, and then cities that want tax revenues and these types of things, and to have that safety of doing it the right way, because you don't want to mess around and do things under the table when you're talking about a property that might be, over $1 million, if not when you buy it within a short few years. And so that's encouraging. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is another thing that surprised me is I saw in your statistics as I was preparing for this that something like 6% of the buyers that you already have are from Colombia. And yes, Colombia already has a strong presence in South Florida, especially or throughout the metro area. But of course, we always like to say out in Doral and Sweetwater, but really everywhere. Um, why do you think this property, or what is it that has caught the attention of buyers and investors with ties to Colombia?
Yeah, well, I think that, the ability to rent it out short term, the Colombian buyer has a lot of experience in Miami for the most part. They really have been buying in Miami for decades, and have owned many times different types of properties or have friends or family members that have. And so having that flexibility of not just having it be a second home, but also something that can generate rental income, I think has been very popular with Colombian buyers that are seeing it as like a quasi investment and not something they're going to move to directly. I don't know if it's timing or the stars have aligned, but there seems to be a lot of interest from Colombia recently. We've had some really successful trips over there in the past 6 months, I would say. So it's an interesting time, and we're expecting many, many Colombians to be visiting us soon with the World Cup. So
Absolutely.
hopefully that will also be a new wave of Colombian buyers, to on the days between games to come and buy themselves a place here in South Florida.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you wanted to touch upon that I neglected to mention or ask you about?
I think that when you mentioned the neighborhood evolution and when we started talking about North Beach, Miami is really becoming a city of neighborhoods, and I think that there probably isn't another neighborhood, and I know them pretty well, that has such a great combination of proximity because you're really close to everything. You're not far from the airport, you're really close to the city, you're extremely close to the beach, of amenities because this neighborhood has really built-in amenities. I mentioned the tennis center and all of the beach volleyball and the beach tennis and all of these other things, but that's not something to be taken lightly. It also has a community center on Normandy, which is like 15 minutes away walking Normandy Isle. You have a golf course that's public. So you have a lot of access to things, which access in Miami is every day more and more difficult to really give you that kind of resort lifestyle at Palma without having to pay, resort prices. So that's something that I think will give people a reason to come back, both the guests and the owners that want to use this as a second home. Having that, access to all of those benefits just so close to their doorstep, I think really gives them the best of the Miami lifestyle in a neighborhood that has a great future, to bring for their valuations long term as well.
Now, you guys are a full service brokerage. So even aside from Palmas, or people might want to see Palmas, or somebody might say, hey, look, that's great, but I want to I think if I came back to Miami, I like Weston, which is kind of way out there. That's what I like about it. I'm not trying to go party anymore. I did that back in the 90s. But so people should contact, or people can contact you all because you have a competence throughout the entire South Florida area. Is that correct? Not just on the beach or not just a particular condo property.
Yeah, that's right. We have just under 400 agents in our company, and we have, over, I want to say 7 branch offices in different markets. So we have agents in different areas all around the city, and we work with people doing with different goals, let's say, all the time. Obviously, we have a huge focus on what is development sales, and I think that, when people are looking at condominiums, especially today, new is a huge advantage because of some of the condo law that has come in reforming after that tragedy that happened in Surfside. Buildings have to start funding reserves and having the financial wherewithal to be ready to make major renovations if necessary, when necessary, as opposed to being in a situation where you defer improvements because of, cost cutting. And so buying into a building that has all of that financial planning in from day one is a huge advantage, and why when people are looking at condominiums, they're mostly looking at new developments. So Palma is really, I think, one of the best options out there. But for people who have different, needs, maybe they want a house or maybe they want a different area, like you mentioned, we absolutely are available and can help and would be
How
happy
can
to.
how can interested buyers or investors, potential investors or potential residents or buyers, get in touch with you or get in touch with the organization if they do have an interest and want to gather more information?
Yeah, so we have a very robust website that has access to a list of all of our agents in the company, and people can filter by language. So if you have, somebody who speaks a particular language, you can filter by that language and see what agents in our company can help. Our main office is in Brickell, and we have a robust group of agents that work out of that office. And if you call our main office and have some kind of particular niche you're looking for assistance for, they can also point you in the right direction. And of course, I'm always happy to help with the matchmaking if necessary between a member of, our company and a potential buyer. But yeah, so there's multiple ways.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll include your contact information. You've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to speak with you guys. Like I said, I've known about the organization from, going back 20 years from my time in Miami, and you guys have a sterling reputation. And that's important because there's so many flim flam artists running around South Florida, any kind of place that has an attractive lifestyle. You tend to see that whether that's Las Vegas or Los Angeles or Miami. And so it's so important to work with reputable people in an organization that has a reputation. I haven't had personal dealings with you, but I know that your reputation speaks for itself. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and we'll
Thank
certainly
you
stay
so
in
much
touch.
for your time and for inviting us to speak with you today.
Okay, you take care.
Okay, bye.